Cool. How is everyone?
Good.
Good. So
Good.
Pete is out of town, so we are going to be doing that class tomorrow at the same time as normally Pete's Forms is. I'm really excited about it. I'm going to be interviewing Fadi and Emily Meiselbach, both great agents, I can say newer agents, 2 or 3 years in the business, both in our top 20% now, just doing wonderful. Work with both buyers and sellers, but I particularly want to pick their brains on what they're doing to get their offers accepted and working with buyers in this market. So it's going to piggyback on what we're wrapping up today with buyers. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on today's session about the actual like making an offer and being competitive and stuff. That's going to be really covered tomorrow in that specific session in multiple, I guess, what's it called? Working with buyers in a multiple offer situation. So tune in tomorrow for that one. It will be recorded if you can't make it, but it'd be great if you can. But today we're going to wrap up the second half of the quote unquote buyer process. So I'm going to share my screen and so we've got these in the launch folders in the Google Drive. There's these step-by-step process. And I know a lot of agents have opened these up as a kind of just a good reference or a foundation for something that they wanted to build themselves, you know, as a task list or a checklist or something like this. So this list, can everyone see it? Just give me a thumbs up.
Yes.
So it's not the end all be all list. There's not every single detail in there. I think I've heard before someone say throughout a transaction, an agent has like 165 things or something like that to do, you know, tasks or whatever. This isn't every single thing, but this is the basics, in the order kind of to kind of complete them. So we're just going to kind of complete this second half all the way to closing, and please feel free to ask questions or ask me to elaborate on different things. Does anyone know where we stopped? Was it submitting an offer and negotiating with the listing agent? Was that where we kind of pulled to? Anyone?
What's it called?
All right, that's where I'm going to start then. Okay, so again, I'll stop here for a second. Finding the property, going and showing it. If your buyer loves a property, reaching out. I think we talked about reaching out to the listing agent to try to determine what's important to the seller besides price, right? So you can go back and kind of craft your offer with your buyer based on whatever information the listing agent will give you. Again, I'm not going to spend any time on that. We're going to talk about that tomorrow. But let's pretend that you were to submit the offer and you were going, I'm going to share with you something else that I think is helpful. So when submitting an offer, guys, can everyone see my email now? I think it's very important from the get-go to make sure that you are putting on, you know, you're putting confidence into the listing agent that you're detail-oriented and you know what you're doing. When I submit an offer to a listing agent, I said something like this, which is some people call it a cover sheet or an offer summary or something like that. But I'm going to take out parts of the offer of the purchase agreement, and I'm going to put them into this body of the email. All right. So I'm addressing it to the listing agent. Please see the attached offer. The subject of the email is offer for. You'd be amazed on how many people just forward over a signed DocuSign envelope or you know, just an attachment that's been scanned in. That's a weird name because that's how it's saved. So I really think, especially in a multiple offer situations in a hot market, you have to have your stuff together. You got to show that you're detail oriented to even have a chance of getting your offer accepted. And I'm going to address the agent, right? I'm going to make sure that I'm sending it to the right email address. I know that seems kind of silly, but you'd be amazed how many listing agents have a specific email address that offers need to go to, right? And I might even re-emphasize that or ask that when I call the listing agent. Like, hey, Randall, I noticed that you don't have a specific email address that offers should go to. Should I just assume it goes to yours, Randall at goodsongroup.com, just to make sure that you're sending it to the right place. Sometimes offers go into spam folders. Please see attached offer, right? So I've attached it, but I'm going to talk about the little highlights of it here. Whatever I'm going to put in the offer, I'm going to put here. I also like to put the things that are going to make my offer seem strong. So even though I'm not asking for selling concessions, home warranty, I'm going to write that here. I'm going to try to get a little bit more credit for the things that I'm offering for free or not asking for. That makes sense? Please confirm that you've received the offer. Thanks. And it's attachment. And the attachment is saved as entitled the address of the property, offer to purchase, and the date. Again, try to make it easy for the listing agent. You know, they're going to save these and they're going to be forwarding them or whatever they do to present them to their seller. Make it really easy. Make your stuff to get, you know, have it organized. When you actually have the offer, make sure it's offer first, disclosures, pre-approval, you know, in the right order, all in one PDF, right? Not 15 attachments. Again, guys, all important stuff that I think will separate you from a run-of-the-mill buyer's agent. Okay. Any questions? Comments?
Matt, do you use DocuSign?
I am still using .loop.
Okay. So the reason why I ask is because with .loop, you could send an offer over and using .loop, but you could also have a PDF attached to it in case the receiving party doesn't have .loop.
Yeah.
I've not found that to be true with DocuSign, so I was just wondering what you did. But since you don't use DocuSign, if other people on here use DocuSign, I wonder what they do when they send an offer over. They just send the DocuSign, or if they just send it as a PDF.
I don't
You
like.
can get a PDF from DocuSign.
I just don't like. I like it being in an email. I don't like having DocuSign or .loop at all. Include like I just like a clean attachment from my email to their email. I don't like the look of the forwards or anything like that because I've received those and they go into spam or they look, you know, they look disheveled. I'm very particular again with the attachment. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is that they receive your offer. So if you're running behind or you need to get it in, getting it in is the most important thing. But after I send this email to them, right, hopefully they're going to respond to me via email. But at the same time that I send this, I'm going to shoot them a text. I'm just going to say, hey, Randy, great speaking with you earlier. Thank you for taking my call. As discussed, I just sent you an email with my buyer's offer. Can you please acknowledge that you've received it? I don't care if they acknowledge it via email or if they respond to my text saying got it, but it's important to do that. Again, some of these go to spam or you've got the wrong email address or I've typed the wrong email address, right? Numerous things happen.
Matt, did you just say that you called him?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Do you call him and say that? Because I don't see that to say confirm that they received your email.
Yeah, so right here I say, please confirm that you've received the offer. Thank you. I just want confirmation. I don't care how it comes across. What I typically do as a listing agent is I reply to their email and say received if I've received it. But I'm also at the same time as a buyer's agent, when I submit this to them, I'm going to shoot them a text just so that they can go look for it. So I don't sit around and wait for an hour for a response and then realize they never even saw it or it's in their spam. Okay. And again, I want to show them that I'm doing my due diligence. I'm respectful, but I'm on top of things. Right. Right. What the old adage, no news is good news. No, I want communication. I want it to be very clear and concise.
I have another quick question.
Yeah.
How did you attach that to the email? Like if we're going from DocuSign, we can attach.
No, I just download it, save it on my computer, attach it.
And then rename it. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
As one attachment with all pre-approval in it, everything, all in it. Right. I'm a stickler. I don't like a bunch of attachments. I want them all in one together. Okay.
So the purchase agreement, the pre-approval, and something else?
All the disclosures, agency disclosure, everything all together in one PDF.
Okay.
So you're going to have to upload the PDF of their pre-approval to DocuSign in order to put it all together and download it as one PDF.
And a copy of the EMD if you have it.
Yeah, if you have it. I write most of my offers to be collected upon accepted PA just because I'm kind of lazy, but or I don't want to have to run around and collect EMDs for offers and not get accepted because that's kind of common right now. So going back to the step-by-step. So I'm going to send that offer over. You know, right now I know it's common. It's multiple offer situation. You're sending your best and final, and hopefully they sign or initial, you know, and then send it back to you. But if in a balanced market, I'm going to do some negotiating. I could, negotiations could be done via phone, via text, via email, via marking up the PA and sending it back and forth. If there's a whole bunch of counters, I may send a brand new, revise my offer, send it as a revised offer, clean, concise, instead of Xing out things. So
I would say, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, Matt's totally right. Sometimes it's easier and quicker and more efficient to do a lot of negotiations, verbally, text, email, but please understand that 0 is binding until it's on a piece of paper and it's bottom line. Don't assume that just because everybody said yes, 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 and then you don't get a bottom line contract for another 36 hours that it's still yours.
Let me
Somebody
tell you,
might have jumped in there.
you're absolutely right, Sharon. Let me tell you a little story. I had a listing and I received an offer, and we countered it via text. We were going back and forth. We were all in agreement. I actually sent it to my seller to bottom line. And in the meantime, we received another offer that we could not pass up. And I had to call back that first agent. I said, I'm sorry, we received another offer. That's just, we have to accept. And she's like, well, we had a deal. I said, you and I discussed the terms and we were in agreement, but I did not have my seller sign it. No, even if I hadn't sent it to her. And she was bummed. She was disappointed, but I had to kind of educate her to say, hey, via text or email, it's not in writing. No one signed it, right? So she was bummed, but we got through it. And in the meantime, I sent the new offer to my seller to get signed as quickly as possible because, like Sharon said, once it's signed, it's it's
Signed.
agreement.
At the bottom line.
Yeah.
Signed and delivered. Signed and delivered.
Signed and delivered. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bottom line just means either final signed by the buyer. So buyer writes an offer, buyer sends offer, seller receives offer, seller reviews offer, seller signs offer, right? If seller doesn't make any changes on that offer is accepted. If seller makes any changes on it, offer gets sent back to buyer reviews and either initials those changes and then signs it, right? And that's what we call bottom line. So it's buyer, seller, buyer.
So if there's no changes, the buyer does not necessarily need to sign it again behind the seller the third time around. Is that what I hear?
They do, acknowledging that they've received it signed from seller.
Okay.
Okay. However, we've talked about this before. If I send an offer, right? If I've got a buyer and Sharon's got a listing and I send my offer today and Sharon's seller signs it today and she sends it back to me today, and then I send to my buyers for bottom lining, but they don't sign it until tomorrow. The contract date's still today because that's when it was accepted, not bottom lined. However, if I sent Sharon an offer today and her sellers counter it today and my buyers sign it and accept that counter tomorrow, what's the contract date?
Today.
Tomorrow.
And that's important for what, like your.
All of your due diligence, all of your inspections.
Okay.
The contract date is what all of your timelines go by. So you need to know, one day could matter depending on how you're lining everything up. So it's important to know what your contract date is and where your your inspections and your due diligence days fall into that, and closing dates. Well, closing dates are not days from, I like how our closing dates are a window of dates, not days after signed PA. So it's not confusing, but
So they always
It's all, go ahead.
have questions.
yeah.
So it always has to be bottom line.
I
Yes.
always have a bottom line. As a rule of thumb, I always bottom line it. Now our PA
The title company will require it.
Yeah. Now you will receive offers as a listing agent. You will receive offers that don't have the language in there that it has to be bottom lined, or buyer's agents that say, "Oh no, we don't have to do that." I always like it done, because it's if a buyer writes an offer and they send it to a seller and the seller accepts it, there's nothing in writing acknowledging that the buyer acknowledges that the seller accepted their offer. So that's why I have bottom lines for everything.
And so you're saying that if they make a counter offer,
If a seller receives an offer and they make any changes to it, that is a counter. Even if you verbally have said, yeah, we're in agreement, if they make any changes to an initial offer, it's a counter. So
Even if the change is just a date, it can
Exactly.
be anything,
Exactly.
anything.
So
Right.
until the buyers acknowledge that change, sign it and initial it, that's the bottom, that bottom line is the contract acceptance date.
but if Sharon, let's say Sharon today, she counters, but I don't sign till tomorrow, then you're
Tomorrow's-
saying it's the tomorrow's acceptance.
Correct.
Because I had to look at all the counter things and
Yep.
initial it and then sign it. Then it goes from tomorrow, not today. But if there's no changes in it, then it starts today when she accepted it.
Yeah.
Did I get this right?
If I submit an offer and the seller signs it, accepting it as is, even if my clients don't bottom line it today, it still starts today. Again,
Okay.
if there was no changes at all.
Simply, maybe it helps to just think to yourself, when were the terms agreed upon?
Mhm.
When are the final terms agreed upon? Right? If the buyer writes an offer, they're obviously agreeing with the terms that they're offering, right? Because they're offering it. And the seller, if they agree to all of those terms without making any changes, there's mutual agreement, right? So that's the contract date. It's
Yeah.
like, when is there mutual agreement?
That's a good way of
So
putting it.
if the sellers make any changes at all, even if it's a date, or even if it's, I'm not leaving the pool table that you wanted, I mean, anything. Now the buyer has to go back and indicate that they agree to that. So it's whenever the buyer comes back and indicates that they agree to it, that you have mutual agreement. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Yes.
Hey, Sharon, I was thinking of that what
Yeah.
you're saying is the meeting of the minds, basically. When the
Correct.
two minds are in agreement. Okay.
That's right. That's right.
I have a quick logistics question, like in the like, let's say you do have, there's some changes in the DocuSign. Is that a whole new agreement that you have to send to get signed, or can you, in DocuSign, can you just change the one thing?
Well, it doesn't matter what service you're using or anything like that, DocuSign, .loop, but you can make changes to the PA, cross off something. Some people still do it via pen. Some people upload it and then do it, cross it out. Any changes need to be initialed, right? So you can do any changes back and forth in the effort to expedite something. I'm gonna go back and forth. Okay, great. We're in agreement. Great. Sign it. Right. I don't like to wait. Time kills all deals. Remember that, guys. So while you're marking up a PA and sending it back, uploading it, like, they could get another offer. So depending on what side of the table you're in, you want to make sure that your client's being looked out for. Like, anytime, like, I'm a buyer and the seller said, yeah, we agree, and I don't have a signed PA back, like, I'm freaking out. I'm like, what is going on, right? Because at any point, right, I've heard from agents too. It's like, we had a deal. No, you didn't have a deal. You had an agreement verbally, but it wasn't a deal until it was signed, right? And,
Well,
and it's the same thing on the listing side. Oh yeah, the buyers are going to be sending an offer. Are they? Well, if you don't have it, don't tell someone else you have a deal, right?
So can I just make a quick comment? Because I just had this, like, in DocuSign specifically, I think maybe this was your question, Patton, was
Mm.
you do have to make a new envelope to resend to
Right.
your people for signatures.
Okay.
And then the other side that I was dealing with, she didn't use anything. I could tell, like, she didn't use .loop or DocuSign. They were like taking papers to get them signed and scanning it. So, I mean, it was taking a little longer on her end, but on my end, I did have to make a new envelope to send the counter.
Yeah. Best
And
case
that
scenario.
counter was just a marked up, you can mark it up on the computer. You don't have to start all over again.
No, well, she requested a new PA just because she wanted a clean one, which so I did, but all my stuff was saved, so I just quickly had to make the changes. I wasn't starting from scratch.
Yeah, I wouldn't mark up your own PA. If you send an offer and the buyer or the seller counters it verbally, just redo it so you can send it to them and then they can sign it as is. So, you don't have to mark up your own, but you can ask them to mark it up if you're in agreement for it, because once they sign it, that puts the ball back in your court. So again, every situation, every situation is just time is of the essence. So whatever is going to make most sense. Because some people are like, well, I'm on the road or I'm doing this. It's like, what can I do to help? What can I do? Right? I can't mark up the PA. Let me just send it to you as PDF and you can email it to whatever helps to be able to expedite it. Because again, guys, time will kill all deals. So let's pretend I get it back. It's bottom line. If my PA states that I'm going to collect the earnest money deposit from the buyer upon accepted purchase agreement, I'm going to get that. To get that copy of the EMD from my buyer. Most of the time for me, it's made out to Keller Williams Advantage. I'm going to turn it in our office. You can also turn it in via the Dropbox out front, put it in an envelope, put the address on it, right? Then you have to fill out that sheet. I fill it out manually if I'm turning it into the office. If not, put it in your DocuSign or your .loop, right? That's the EMD turn-in form. That gets deposited into our escrow account, held with us until closing. It's really a credit against your commission. So just be aware that if the commission is higher than the amount of EMD we're holding, you're going to have to get an EMD overage prior to closing. Doesn't happen very often. Let's say we're holding a $10,000 earnest money deposit and the commission's $9,000. Well, Keller Williams will actually have to give $1,000 to the title company so they can process everything. So if you run into that, talk to Sharon and I about it. It doesn't happen very often, but that gets held in escrow by our company. That's the buyer's money. So if they cancel the transaction due to anything that's allowable, they'll get that money back, of course.
May I add a note too? The personal check takes longer to return. So I don't know if they're still using those in March, but just know that if you use a cashier's check, it's much quicker and it's less stress with your buyer if the deal falls through.
Yeah. So you handle that. So if a buyer is writing a personal check and then the next day they cancel their deal, we're not going to be able to turn around and to give them return their money yet because that check hasn't cleared, because KW is going to send them, basically give them a certified check, and they're not going to give that certified check until they have confirmation that the money is cleared their account. So we're going to be doing our offering or rolling out the electronic EMD for free, right? For all buyers, if they want to utilize that, and there's no fee to do so. That should expedite and make things easier rather than running around having to collect checks and stuff. So that'll be good. So it's a link. They set it up and they submit it and then it comes to our bank account. And again, there will be no fee to do that. So as soon as that PA is bottom line, that's when your clock starts. So you want to make sure that you are doing whatever you need to do in order to complete your buyer's due diligence, as well as get the ball rolling on their mortgage. Okay. So I'm scheduling an inspection, right? When I say it could be you helping your buyer. It can be your buyer setting it up, but scheduling the inspection or inspections is very important. We talked a little bit about this a couple weeks ago or last week with the groups that attended the home inspection classes. Some inspectors do well in septic as well. Some do sewer scope, some don't. And you have to schedule all of them. So there's a fair amount of work to coordinate all of this and to get that time approved with the listing agent or seller, if you will, through showing time. I'm also going to take this opportunity to review any HOA docs, right? A lot of homes are in association, so I'm going to make sure I have a copy of those and that I give those to the buyers. When I say I review those, I'm not reviewing it. I may, but it's not, you know, it's I want on record that I've given a copy to my buyers, right? So I typically am going to send it to them via email. Okay. That way there's a written record. That way they have the ability to review them. And if there's any questions, I will ask, right? I don't want to pigeonhole myself. In 3 weeks, my buyers say, oh, I didn't know you couldn't rent a property, or you couldn't rent it out your unit, or I couldn't add a shed. And now they want to back out of the deal when we're outside of their inspection period. Okay. So whatever other due diligence you want to make sure that they complete, verifying the elementary school that that house attends, or what the property taxes will be, or what it looks like in the dark. I mean, this is a period, we say inspection period, but it's really a due diligence period that a buyer can, per our PA, walk for any reason, including not actually inspecting the home. I want to be very frank with this. I've had agents that heard of clients that get cold feet 2 days, 3 days after PA, and they say they want to back out, and they send the listing agent a mutual release, and the listing agent says, you can't back out. You haven't inspected the home. And you can say, no, my buyers want to back out for absolutely any reason. They don't have to have it inspected in order to then see the results in order to back out, right? And this pisses off a lot of sellers, pisses off listing agents, right? So you don't want to ever submit deals only to then potentially just walk away. But just know that during that due diligence period, your buyers really have the ability to walk away for any reason. And then they have to provide in writing within that period of time to satisfy the purchase agreement if they do want to be released. But they don't have to do it because of a specific reason.
Hey, Matt.
Yeah.
I had this happen last fall, a deal offer we got accepted, and I think you remember that the listing guy just went ape, you know what, and
Yep.
it took like 2 weeks to resolve.
Yep.
But the lesson from the story was I had to come to Jesus with my buyers to tell them that the due diligence period is as you said, to find out things about the house that would prevent you from enjoying it, not to just back out on the deal.
Correct.
So painful experience, but I think it was worthwhile in the end.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And I did think of you when I was saying that story. And the thing about our offer, our purchase agreement, and Pete said this before, if your buyers provide notice that they want to back out of the deal, our office will process the return of their EMD, even if that doesn't come back signed by the listing agent or by the seller, as long as it's, because it doesn't need to be, as long as the dates work out, right? So a mutual release is signed by your buyer and sent to the listing agent, but doesn't always have to be get received back from the listing agent or the seller, especially if they dig their feet in, as long as your buyers are adhering to the dates set out in the purchase agreement. Make sense?
Can I ask one question on that?
Yeah, sir.
So I know we typically put like a 7-day inspection period in the PA, and that's business days, or no, that's just regular days, right?
Calendar days.
Calendar days.
Yep.
And so say it's Tuesday, you have until the next Tuesday to, like, by midnight on that 7th day to say something?
Yeah, so this is a good one to make sure that you fully understand with Pete, because it is set out in the purchase agreement, right? For you, how many days to complete your inspection, your inspections, right? Or whatever it is that you want. The purchase agreement states you have X amount of days to have it inspected. And then you have X amount of days after inspection to provide notice in writing in terms of your intentions. So if you inspect it on the 7th day, then you'll have 2 more days, let's say. If you put 2, could be 3. If you inspect it on the 3rd day, you have 2 or days, right? Whatever amount you have. Does that make sense?
So
Sharon?
whenever the inspection happens, then it starts the next timeline. It's not you. So then they wouldn't really have, like, if you had the inspection on the 3rd day, they wouldn't have 4 more days to read the bylaws.
Correct. Unless you did some sort of extension in writing or something like that.
Well, hold on. If there's bylaws, if it's a condominium,
Yeah.
and you have a condominium addendum on there, it'll say the listing agent has 7 days to get you the bylaws, and after confirmed receipt, the buyer has 3 days to review them. So that's different.
Yeah.
If you have that addendum attached.
Yeah.
Okay, but like verifying schools and all of that is going to be
That's right.
inspection thing.
Correct.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
And be aware that that's the way our purchase agreement is written. Be aware that some, if you're on the listing side, some purchase agreements come in and they say buyer will have 10 days to complete inspections or whatever. And if they don't provide you in writing, after that's up with it, like it's written differently depending on the purchase agreement. So ours might be different than someone else's. So it's important for you to know that on the list side, right? Because we know our purchase agreements, what you use when you're submitting an offer, but when you're on the list side, you're going to be receiving purchase agreements from other brokerages that are written differently, right? And if you ever have questions on it or like don't understand it or whatever, bring it to us, bring it to Pete, say, hey, I want to make sure I'm protecting my buyers. How many days do we have? If how, this is the timeline of what happened. Like, you know what I mean? And then again, when in doubt, extend it. Sharon and I talked about, with Craig or whatever, like, let's say you're at the home inspection and they see some issues, right? Those home inspectors are not going to tell you how much it costs to fix or what to do exactly. They're going to say, you should have a professional come out. And if that's your intention, what your buyers want to do, you're not going to be able to do that probably the very next day in order to get something in writing in terms of what it would cost or whatever. So communicate with the listing agent saying, hey, this is what we found. We want to have someone come out, right? I'm sending you an addendum, or already sent you an addendum extending it 5 days or whatever, right? And most people on the other side are not going to have a problem doing this as long as it's in writing. If you just say, hey, can we have another 5 days, right? But it's not in writing, it's going to bite you in the butt. Remember, no oral agreements are valid.
But in this market, if you say did that, like reached out, needed to extend the inspection, and the seller had then got a better offer or something, they now would have they could say no and then break your deal and move on, right?
Well, they can't break your deal. What they can do is say no. And then at that point, your buyer has a decision to make.
Oh,
right?
That makes sense.
Do they want to move forward as is, or do they want to,
Okay.
just like in buyer, and I'll maybe I'll just focus on this next. Let's say you haven't inspected and you go back to the seller and you say, this is what we want you to do. All right. Whether it's you want them to extend because you're further investigating something, or you want to walk away, or you want to ask them to do something. If they say no, that doesn't mean the deal is dead. That just means the ball's back in your court for your buyers to either provide a counter, say, okay, we asked for 2,000, we'll settle for 1,000. Can you do that? All right. It's all negotiation, but either way, until you're at an absolute standstill, your buyer still is in the driver's seat, right? Just depends on how hard of ball that the seller wants to play, right?
Yeah. So like,
it's just important I think, for you guys to know, because you guys think, some people have told me like, what if the seller says no, they can accept another offer? No, they can't.
Right. So my inspection is about to start here in a minute, but to what Matt's saying, remember that paragraph in the PA, right? So I'm just going to use certain numbers. You have 7 days to inspect. You have 2 days after to get to them to let them know if you're good or if you want any changes or if you're out. They have 2 days to get back to you, and you have another 2 days to respond to whatever their response is, right? That's why there's 3 2s, 7, 2, 2, and 2.
Yep.
Go back and read that and really understand it. And like he said, when you're on the listing side, you've got to really, really, really have a good grip on what their contract says.
Yep. Exactly.
Now that I'm looking at my form, I have a big star that says only buyer can kill deal from Pete's form.
Right.
So I already knew that.
That's why you take notes. It's perfect. Yep. All right.
Pat, yeah,
I'm
Fatten, go
gonna
ahead.
check out.
Okay, good luck. Fatten, you're on mute.
Is it possible for me to use that inspection period as something to sweeten up the deal to get the multiple, like if I could just shorten that inspection period to a couple of days, that if that might be important to the seller?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to tie up the property for weeks on end, but I'm going to fully. I don't think it's realistic to have an inspection done in 2 days. I mean, you could have one previously scheduled, just to make it appear that you have your stuff together. I don't. At the end of the day, I don't think it's going to make or break, because for most sellers, it's going to be a price in terms of like occupancy, appraisal guarantee, appraisal waiver, that kind of thing. It can't hurt in a multiple offer situation, a hot market. Don't put 10 or 14 days for inspection, but 7 or maybe 5. I'd just be very careful about putting 2, because that's really tight if you couldn't get someone lined up, unless you already have them lined up tentatively, if that makes sense.
The appraisal
Right.
waiver would only be for cash deals, right?
No. So in a cash transaction, cash offer, there's no appraisal, right? The bank doesn't have to justify the price. An appraisal waiver, which we'll go over tomorrow again, but appraisal waiver is going to be basically saying that, or an appraisal waiver or an appraisal guarantee is the buyer saying, should the property not appraise at the price that we're offering, we're willing to cover the difference in cash up to a certain dollar amount. Okay, so it's basically giving the seller peace of mind that if it does not appraise at the purchase price, that they're not going to have to lower their price to what it does appraise at, right? Or presetting at a specific dollar amount. Because when a property has multiple offers and the price gets bid up, that's where it's very unlikely that the property will appraise at that price that it got bid up to, right? So if I have multiple offers, I want my seller to have surety of close, which means peace of mind knowing that if it doesn't appraise, the buyer is going to be covering that difference. Okay.
I have an appraisal related question.
Sure.
I'm dealing with a property right now that my buyer is interested in, but it's burned. And it's a cash type deal, but she wants to know, and I posted that this morning, if she could potentially use a FHA 203K. That would have to go through the appraisal process, correct? If she did.
I believe so. Yeah. There's not going to be any loans that don't require an appraisal. Certainly FHA loans. Because what they're trying to do is, if the home costs this, it needs this much work, and what is it going to be worth after this much work is done? So yeah, I would assume that it would need an appraisal. What might be an easier thing is if you can pay cash for it, buy it cash, and then refinance into a loan once you own it. That could be potentially an option.
Okay. Thank you.
That might give you a better chance of winning the deal too.
Yeah, because they want cash, and I was trying to figure out why cash only, but now it just dawned on me. Probably.
Yeah, most people aren't going to be able to get a mortgage on a burned house. Yeah.
Okay.
So completing all your inspections, deciding what you want to do, sometimes negotiating, but again, seller can't kill deal. I mean, seller, I guess, can kill the deal, but it's not at their discretion. It's not until that they dig their heels in and say, we're not doing anything, we're not giving you anything, we're not adjusting the price. Then your buyers have a decision to make. And if they still want to walk away, they can with a mutual release. If not, they're going to be accepting the home as is. I always document all of this, that whatever you agree upon based on inspection, or if your buyers are accepting the home, that I put an addendum that the buyer's inspection period is satisfied. All other terms and conditions remain the same. I always like to have everything documented. I'm going to make sure if I do have any changes after an inspection, such as price adjustment or concession, we're going to get a copy of that to the lender as well as the title company, so that they have the information that they need to adjust their numbers. And then I'm going to give the go to the lender to have the appraisal ordered. And every appraiser is different, or every mortgage company is different. A lot of them will ask you, hey, let me know when the inspection's all good, and then we'll order their appraisal. They do that because if your buyer incurs an appraisal and then backs it out because of inspection, they're going to be out that money. So I'd prefer for my buyers to save the money on this appraisal until we know we're going to be moving forward with the home. Does that make sense? That's why when I put together an offer, I typically say the appraisal will be ordered within 14 days, because it just gives enough time to be able to do that. I don't think offering to order the appraisal quicker is really a huge benefit, to be honest. And remember, a cash transaction appraisal is not needed. Then you're going to be patiently waiting for the results of the appraisal. You are not at the appraisal. Your buyer's not at the appraisal, right? Typically the listing agent, well, typically no one's at the appraisal, but appraisers go in, it's very quick. They're taking a few photos, maybe some measurements. They're doing a majority of their report back at their office. Sometimes sellers are home. It's usually not a problem because, again, they're in and out. Sometimes the listing agent shows up there, especially if you're kind of worried about the appraisal. Say, hey, here's some comps. I'm going to help you, or here's a sheet of all the improvements that we've done. Most of the time, I don't think it really makes a difference to an appraiser, but it's always good to do it, especially if you're concerned about it potentially being low. All right, I put on my face. I don't act like I'm doing their job for them if I'm on the list side. I'm just here to make sure that they have all the information that they need. Make sense? But on the buy side, you're waiting for the appraisal to be done. Hopefully, you don't typically have notifications, so I'm following up with the lender at this point. Hey, any word? They're waiting on the appraisal company to submit it, and then for them or their underwriter to review it, and then for you to give a go. Usually your answer is we're good or we're not good, right? If we're good, I don't care what it appraised at, as long as it appraised at what it needed to be. If it appraised for less than purchase price, they're going to provide you a copy with it, and then you're going to decide what to do. If your buyers have had appraisal guarantee in it, that's probably going to come into effect, and then you're going to have to make sure you write up an addendum. If it didn't, or if it didn't come into, depending on what the terms of your PA are, you may have to renegotiate. Okay, that means letting the listing agent know, hey, we have a problem. We under contract for 200, appraisal came in at 190. And they're going to want to probably see a copy of it, and you're going to have to renegotiate at that point. Again, seller doesn't have to come down. If buyer doesn't have to come up. Typically, there's a meeting somewhere in the middle. Again, specific, especially if there's no appraisal guarantee, right? Nothing preset in writing that states what's going to happen. What I would say, though, is if it's a good appraisal, chances are the seller lets that deal die and it gets appraised again with the next buyer. It's probably going to come in the same. So that's why you review the appraisal. What comps did they use? Were they recent? Are they good comps? Are there better comps, right? You can fight appraisals. Oftentimes you don't win. I know Kim fought one early on in her real estate career and actually won. And she was able to fight it because she had her ducks in a row and her information together. Said, hey, I'm not getting aggressive here, but here's what I used to price this home, or here's what we had in mind, this comp, this comp, this comp, this comp. And they took that into consideration and they adjusted it as such, which is awesome. But it doesn't always happen that way. I've had tri-level, and there was comps all over the place, but the appraiser was dead set on not using anything that wasn't a tri-level.
I have something to add to that, and I really want you to on it. Just got a call from a potential client who was disturbed with their agent because they've been trying to figure out the appraisal agreement process, and they asked about comps, and the agent basically said comps don't matter right now and would not move forward with providing those. Kind of goes against everything we've been talking about.
Well, help me understand. So when a buyer is looking at a property saying, hey, Mr. Agent, this house just listed, it's listed for 200,000. What are your thoughts on the price? The agent saying, well, it doesn't matter.
Basically, yeah, she says it's
okay.
Wild West. And
it is, but it doesn't. Yeah, that's a terrible agent, in my opinion. I've had those similar conversations though, and it goes something like this. Hey, I'm looking at the comps and here they are. I'm going to send them to you. They're kind of all over the place, and I can justify the list price. I don't necessarily know if I can justify it higher than the list price, but there's buyers willing to pay. What something's worth is what someone else is willing to pay. Now, an appraiser needs justification by comps. Other buyers don't need comps though in order to offer what they want to offer. Mm-hmm. But if I can't justify anything higher than 200 and you want to offer 210, just be aware that we probably have to do a $10,000 appraisal guarantee to give that listing agent and that seller peace of mind that they're going to get 210 if we offer that, right? So comps matter, but at the same time, it's not a determiner of what something just is worth or what it isn't worth. right?
Mhm. Okay.
All you're trying to do is basically justify or see, is this property going to appraise, right? So I recently had a buyer and he was looking at a condo, and I'm pulling comps. I'm like, I can't even justify the price that they're asking. I know you're willing to pay it because that's what you're qualified for and you know your budget, but I can't even justify the price that they're amount in terms of making sure that it's going to appraise.
Mhm.
So any higher than that, like you're really going into, you were really setting the expectation that this is not going to appraise, right? So it was part of a conversation. It wasn't the end all be all. It just sounds like that agent's got some really terrible bedside manner.
At least, yeah. Okay.
I'd be really careful too, talking with someone who's under contract with another agent.
Okay.
Something to that. I appreciate you reaching out to me because you're under a contract with an agent. I can't really share a lot with you. If you end your relationship with them, I would be happy to work with you.
Mhm. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. You get notification that appraisal came back great. Cool. At that point, you're waiting on clear to close, right? And this is there's a lot of, I mean, just if anyone's been through a transaction, there's a lot of hurry up and wait, especially on the buy side. You know, you go get under contract, you have inspection, they order appraisal, and then you're just waiting. And a lot of times buyers like don't know what the hell everyone's waiting on. So you have to tell them what's going on behind the scenes, right? A good mortgage lender is going to keep them updated, right? Some of them have it via an app, sometimes it's via email. This is what's going on, but right, the underwriter, the people on the back end, the bean counters, like they're making sure that person's file is good. They're justifying where all their money's coming from, all their debts, right? They're reviewing the appraisal, making sure that the financing is solid. But you know, even a lender that says we can do really quick closings, I'm always going to put 35 to 45 days for a closing on a PA right now. That's just how long it's taking, especially with everyone being busy. And occupancy beyond that, if we need that, or if that's part of the agreement. But at that point, we're waiting on clear to close, which is the lender giving that final stamp saying, okay, great, we can close this deal. At that point, you're kind of coordinating with the agent. Hey, you know, what works for you closing wise, right? And this is where it's a little wishy-washy. There's no set foundation for this. Oftentimes the listing agent or the seller determines where the closing is going to occur, but COVID world, most closings are split, meaning even though they're with different title companies, they're actual true split, different locations too. So most of the time you can close it wherever it's convenient for your client. However, they have to be basically closing at the same time, or buyer closing, signing everything first. So it really depends. You know, you have extra coordination if someone's out of town or if it needs to be notarized and sent. So you're talking with the other agent before you're then looping in the title company and the mortgage person and everything. But you need to wait. You can tentatively set something, but most title companies are not going to set it in their calendar until you have that clear to close. Okay. Word of advice: if you schedule a closing at the later part of the day, sometimes funds don't come in and then the banks close, right? So buyers might not get their keys to the next day, or sellers might not get their check until, you know, Monday. If you close on a late Friday and the funds weren't in, guess what? Over the weekend, nothing really happens in the finance world. So just keep that in mind. I try to do closings, not very first thing in the morning, but like mid-afternoon. So there's time on either side for the banks to process, right? And I try not to do Fridays because, like I said, I mean, if they're not getting keys, if there's like the sellers have occupancy, it's not too big of a deal, right? But if they're waiting on they're expecting to get their keys, they want to move in over the weekend, try to close it on the Thursday if you can. Make sense? Schedule a final walkthrough. I do a final walkthrough whether my buyers are getting possession at closing or not. Getting possession at closing basically means are the sellers handing over the keys at closing. If the sellers have occupancy, whether it's day, 3 days, 60 days, they're not getting keys at the closing. However, they own the house when they sign everything. It's all settled, right? They just become landlords for a period of time. So depending on the occupancy situation, you want to instruct your buyers to put the utilities into their name. If the sellers are staying in the home, they don't have to put the utilities in their name right away, but they do have to get insurance from day one. They're going to start owning the home and paying their mortgage from day one, right? Seller utilities such as gas and electric, they can call ahead and put them in their names. Something like water, if it's city water and sewer, that can't be typically taken out of someone's name and taken into someone's name. So that's just stays with the property. So they're what we call a final water read's done as of the date of closing or the date of possession, whatever comes second. The seller or the listing agent will call for a final water read in order for the water company to know what that water read amount is. So then they can give a final bill to the seller for the dates up until that read. And then from the date after that read going forward, that's what the buyer's responsible for, right? So on the list side, make sure that you or your seller are doing a final water read.
Do you do that on the day of the closing? Is that when the read is supposed to take place, or the day?
If there, I mean, listen, there's not much water used on a daily rate. So if it's the day before or the day after, it's not the end of the world. But if that's if the buyers are getting possession at close, right? If there's 60 days of occupancy or 30 days of occupancy, you don't have to do that water read until that 30 days or 60 days or whatever, whenever they're handing over the keys.
Okay.
Make sense? Yeah. Yeah.
All right, one more quick question on that.
Sure.
Is that only if it's a situation where there's a water bill, so city or whatever, not if it's a well?
Yeah, if it's well and septic, there's no water bill, there's no sewer bill, so it's nothing. You don't have to worry about that. Nope. Yep. And then the same thing with like a cable, internet kind of thing. I mean, you know, if your buyers are setting that up, you know, they're not going to be able to set that stuff up until they get possession of it, right? So, you know, in other words, if they're giving the sellers 7 days of occupancy, don't have your buyers setting up for internet install the day after closing, because they're not going to be allowed to go into the house yet. They own it, but the sellers still have occupancy for a period of time. Does that make
I have
sense?
one more question.
Yeah.
In our PA it's on number 6, where that $400 like deposit is for the final water read.
Yep.
If you are selling a property that's well, do you X that out, or do you just not?
Yeah. I think it says like if there is a water bill. Yeah, no money gets held in escrow for water and sewer deposit if it's well and septic. And
Okay.
if they I don't know the exact language off the top of my head, but you can either exit out or put in additional provisions that no monies will be held.
Okay, because like they had an issue with that, and I don't think I explained it well enough of like it didn't apply to us.
Yeah, I mean,
So I should have said like, don't worry about that. There is no.
Yeah, and when you say don't worry about it, I would still like have it documented somewhere.
Document like that we are dealing with a well.
Yeah. Yep. Because it doesn't say in the PA that there's a weller. So if I want to either exit out and initial it or put it in the additional conditions, it depends on what PA you're using or what the exact verbiage. If it says if it's not municipal water and sewer, then you're fine.
Okay, that makes sense.
So,
Thank you.
yeah. Again, number 5 on this after clear to close is issued, talks about what I said in the EMD overage. Again, just think of it, that's super confusing. Just think of it as the earnest money deposit higher than the commission you're going to be receiving. Because think about this. If you're helping a buyer and you're holding a $3,000 earnest money deposit and Keller Williams is holding that money, you go to closing. Some people say, well, how is KW going to give that money to the title company? They don't. They just hold on to the $3,000. It's documented on the Alta statement that KW already has 3. So if your total commission was 6,000, the title company is just writing a check to KW for the other 3, since we were already holding 3. Okay. So if you ever get if you ever get a commission check at a closing and you're like, this is short, right? Don't bring it up. Think about how much EMD we're holding. It's not until we're holding a $5,000 EMD and the commission's only 4,000. Then you actually have to give money back to the title company because KW is holding too much. Won't happen very often, but that's what that means.
So we get our check too at the same time during closing? Is that what I heard you say?
Keller Williams Advantage gets a check at closing most of the time. Some title companies during COVID were wiring it directly to KWA. and not giving you anything, not giving you a closing packet, not giving you a check, that's fine. They would email you the closing package after. So either way, I don't really care. I actually prefer it because I don't like getting a big old paper thing because I'm just going to toss it after I scan it in anyway. So I'd prefer electronic copy. But if they give you a paper check, that's cool. It'll have the address on it and everything, and then you just go and turn it in at the MCA office with Carolyn. And as long as everything else is in your DocuSign or in command for compliance, then they'll process to give you paid deposited to the same account that you have on file of ACH pulling out for your office fees.
How does that work? How long does that take?
If you have everything in your compliance and you turn a check in, you can expect to get paid the next day. But again, that's the key. Do you have everything in there for compliance? So you can submit to Market Center ahead of time. So the only thing you're really waiting on is the package, the closing package of the check, right? Attending close. Yeah.
You've submitted all your paperwork wherever you are in this process. If things come up that change, you just submit at one at a time until you get the full closing package?
The closing package is going to be at the end. It's culmination of the closing, right? It's buyer, seller, signed documents. But
right. But
like if you've submitted, if you've submitted everything in the, you've submitted everything, and let's say there's an addendum, and then you just add that addendum, right?
And just submit that just one thing separately.
Yeah, it probably won't change anything in terms of compliance, but it's for the, my point being is that people come in, they turn in a check and they're like, why don't I get paid? Well, your stuff's not in command. It's you don't have a signed buyer's agency agreement, or you don't have this, or it's, it's a piece of paper that you might have had them physically sign, but it's not there. Or it's in your, you know what I mean? Like you just have to have your ducks in a row ahead of time.
Is there a list of all that stuff? Sorry.
Yeah, there is. Yep. I just shared it with actually everyone on the Facebook group.
Okay, I'll check
a couple
that.
days ago. There's some things that need to be in there for compliance, and there's some things that just need to be for an offer. So,
Okay.
Hey, Matt.
Yeah.
Real quick, in command, doesn't it show everything? Now it's got more than you really need, but that would be another list also.
Yep. Correct. Yep.
For each step.
Correct. Yep. And yeah, I go to all my closings. I'm there. I make it a celebratory thing. You're kind of just there twiddling your thumbs, but your buyer is going to receive. This is where it gets a little weird. Backing up for a second, prior to closing, your buyer is going to be kind of nervous Nelly, depending on their personality type, because they're waiting on their final numbers from the lender, and it can be a matter of just days prior to closing where they haven't received anything, or they receive it and they're like, oh, but the lender's still working on it for finalizing numbers. Like that's a normal process as they work through prorations, review for mistakes or whatever. Like it's right up until almost the very last minute. Like you're going to have them may not know how much money they have to bring to closing, right? And 99% of the time they're going to have to wire monies to the title company based on their final numbers. So it's good to be in communication with the mortgage company, and the mortgage company is sending elements to your title company one talking to the other title company, make sure they balance. So it's a little bit of a what is it called, Chinese fire engine or whatever. It's a little bit of a mess kind of at the end. And listen, everybody says they have better systems than this, and I've never met like the best process. I use Legacy, and I really they're on top of everything, but there's a lot of moving parts in this that you can't control, right? The mortgage company, the title company. So I always tell agents, when in doubt, like over communicate, right? If you think you're waiting on something, make sure that person knows you're waiting on something, right? Like just be very, very, very on top of things as best you can to make sure, because no one else is doing it for you. Okay. Your buyers are going to get the final numbers. They're going to, from the mortgage company, they're going to say, okay, or from the title company, you need to bring this to closing. They're 99% of the time going to have to wire it, right? So they need to go to their bank and submit a wire so the money goes directly from their bank account to the title company. You will never provide your buyers wiring instructions. The title company will never provide your buyer's wiring instructions electronically. Your buyers need to call and speak with someone from the title company, get those wire instructions over the phone to go to their bank to do it. And their bank should also, while they're submitting that wire, call to verify those. Why? Does anyone know why I emphasize this so much?
Security reasons.
Yeah. So let me tell you a story. I work in real estate and I deal and talk about wiring and stuff all the time. I wired money for a hunt that I'm going on in Argentina, and the final deposit was due. And I emailed the outfitter and I said, what's the final amount? He responds, hey, this is the final amount. This is the instructions. And then he follows up and says, you know what? Nope, this is the banking instructions. They've changed. Here's the updated wire instructions. Okay, great. Don't think of anything of it. I wire $7,000. I get a message from the outfitter saying, we were hacked. If you've wired any money to revised wiring instructions, call your bank ASAP. I almost lost $7,000 because I received an email after that said, hey, these are updated instructions. There was, if you look closely though, there's like one letter difference from that email that I received second time, right? So they hacked into the outfitter's email, saw transaction or the interaction between the two of us, intervened, sent me an email from a different account, right? So this is how wire fraud happens. They hack into title companies' emails. They hack into ours. They see a transaction going on, and they send the buyers, updated wiring instructions, right? Luckily, I was able to call my bank, put a stop on it because it was international. It had a little bit more leeway than a same country wire, so I didn't lose the money, but I almost did. And I fell for it because I wasn't paying attention. And I emphasize this all the time. That's why you call the title company, you on the phone with them. What's the wire instructions? So there's no chance to potentially have money is gone, because 99% of the time, if you wire money, it's probably just gone, right? It's not like ACH where you can pull it back. I was lucky. A lot of people that have been victims of wire fraud haven't been so lucky, and that money's gone. So even if you're just forwarding something from your own email, like, don't put yourself in that position, right? And if they say, hey, and you can educate your buyer, say, hey, if you receive an email, call the title company. Like, if it looks suspicious, it is, right? Get it over the phone.
Okay.
So I don't want to scare anyone with this, but it's a real thing. Thieves are very smart, and they figured out ways to scam people in a variety of ways. I know an agent in Birmingham that had a client lose like $100,000. FBI was brought in, all these people were brought in, but it doesn't change the fact that that buyer no longer could buy that home, and that money was gone, floating somewhere, probably international. So it's a mess, but it's a real thing. That's why we haven't signed that wire fraud warning. They're going to wire their money, so the title company has that plus their deposit, and they're going to get their keys and everything like that at closing, unless there's possession. I'm still going to do, back up for a second. I'm still going to do a final walkthrough prior to closing. If they're getting possession, great. Buyer stuff, our seller stuff should be completely out. If they're not getting possession, it's really just a walkthrough to make sure that they've either fixed things that they were supposed to during inspection, or that they just haven't damaged the home beyond how it was previously. We're going to do another walkthrough prior to signing the key exchange form if they had possession, or if they had occupancy, but that's later on. That's when the buyer's agent or the listing agent tells you that the sellers are out. So I kind of jammed through the last part, but I want to respect everyone's time. I might have just button up a few things post-closing for buyers next time, but tomorrow should be a good class on some best practices that Fadi and Emily are utilizing to get their offers. They're two different types of agent, but all very successful in their own right. So I'll be interested to see the dynamic, and I urge you guys to attend that. Any last minute?
Is that going to be recorded?
It should be, yes. Yep. I will make sure it is. Let me put it that way.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
I have
You
a
said
question.
we can invite other agents. Sorry.
Yeah, it's the KWAdvantageTraining.com link. I urge you invite, whoever you want, whether it's someone you're trying to get in your downline or just an agent you think could be helpful. We are open book here. There's no secrets, and it's really not about KW. It's just about best practices. So we are all about that. If you guys ever want to invite another agent that you're trying to recruit or talk to, or you think could benefit from coaching or training or just being part of our office, welcome aboard. Our Monday sessions would be kind of weird, but anything else I'm great with. So any other questions?
Yeah, for the final walkthrough,
Yeah.
you're just checking after 30 days of occupancy to make sure there's nothing damaged. And if there was, then what? Do you negotiate or tell them to fix it before you do the key exchange?
Well, it depends on what you have in your occupancy agreement, meaning that the title company should withhold money for occupancy charge as well as for potential damages. Okay. So there's two separate line items in the occupancy addendum. So in other words, if your final walkthrough after the sellers have had occupancy reveals something, there's a potential to discuss. Now, the question is, was it there before or was it not? Meaning, if you do your final walkthrough before closing, but the seller's possessions are all still there, right? You can't necessarily see what's under the rug or what's behind the couch or, what's in the cabinet because there's a bunch of pots and pans in it. So there's not a blanket answer to that question. I've had situations where it was a bit of a pissing match back and forth because the seller said something was like that. Buyer said it wasn't. We had to go back to inspection report. It wasn't there. So it's a negotiation. It can be a mess. Most of the time, for me, vast majority of the time, everything's signed, everything's good. It's all good, And if you know that your buyers are going to be very particular, it's something to talk to ahead of time. Maybe occupancy, post-closing occupancy isn't something for them to entertain, but you typically don't know that. It pops up later. So normal wear and tear, it's outside of normal wear and tear. So it depends on how you define that. Now, if there is a giant hole in the wall that wasn't there before, that's pretty obvious that occurred, them moving out, right? And then you got to get a quote, how much is it going to cost and this and that. But, typically what I find is like the people not understanding, like the sellers weren't going to patch and repair holes in the walls and stuff. That's normal wear and tear. As long as those photos were hung and they're already there, and that seller or the buyer can expect that there's going to probably be nail holes. The seller is not responsible to patch those and repaint the walls unless you have that specified in an agreement, right? So that was a roundabout way of answering the question, but there's not a one size fits all answer to that one. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But whatever you do, don't do your walkthrough. If the sellers are handing over keys at closing, I'm not doing a walkthrough until their stuff's out, right? There's no point in that. And the same thing if they have occupancy, right? I'm not doing a final walkthrough for a key exchange until your stuff's out, right? I've gone to houses where it's like the sellers were still moving out stuff. It's like, no, like I want, it's gone, like you have to be ready to hand over keys, right? Now it's different if they have a pile of junk at the curb. So I want to make sure that that's out of the house. But if that doesn't get picked up by the trash company, it's going to be my buyer's responsibility. So I might have some money held in escrow for that. But every situation is a little different. Always feel free to ask me, Sharon, or anyone from the team if you have any questions regarding that, because there's so many different nuanced situations that could occur. So, all right. Anything else? No? Okay, cool.
Nope.
I recognize the majority of you guys have not done open houses, or if you have, you haven't done open houses in a while. So we're probably over the next couple of weeks, we're going to do an open house class and get real nitty gritty scripts, dialogues, how to act, how to door knock prior to, how to get your most run for your money. So keep that one in mind. And again, I'm always looking for other ideas or suggestions for classes. The one we're doing tomorrow, multiple offers for a buyer side, we're going to be following up with that in a couple weeks with a multiple offers from the selling side. So that's outside of coaching. That's a market center class, but just know that that'll be on the calendar too. I think it already is actually. Okay, guys.
Great.
All right. We'll see you.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you so
welcome.
much.
We'll see you tomorrow at 11. If you have anything, let me know. And if I don't see you, have a great weekend.
Have a great
Matt, I
weekend.
have a quick question for you. This is Hope.
Sure. I'll stay on.
Really quick. So the person I'm thinking about inviting is a new agent. It's my cousin.
Okay.
She is looking for a home in Vegas, and I'm wondering, is that someone that I know that I can refer her to an agency over there? How does that work
Wait. Okay. So,
to you guys?
your cousin lives in Vegas?
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, she's welcome to attend. I don't know how much stuff is different here versus Vegas, but yes, if she was interested in joining Keller Williams, you would want to put her in touch with a team leader that's with KW in Vegas.
Okay.
In order
That would be the next step if she does decide. I wanted her to just have an opportunity to see how our company does.
Sure. Yeah, and our training style, what we do might be different than those, but by all means, I mean, it's all good stuff.
Okay.
But yes, if you have a recruit for a KW, whether they're licensed or not licensed, and a different part of the country, you'd want to put them in touch with the team leader there. And Rob can help you. I think there's a directory, but Rob or Kate can help you, put you in touch with a team leader or assistant team leader or a market center in that area.
Okay, perfect. And local folks here, if they're not licensed, they can still come tomorrow?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I mean, not just if they're intending on getting their license or something.
Yeah, of
Obviously,
course.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think the Joe Schmo off the street would really want to spend an hour with us, but sure. Hey,
Yes, these are people who are considering. Okay,
cool.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Cool. All right, Angela. Oh, I just saw your text. Yeah, absolutely. That's fine. I'm available tomorrow too. Okay, cool. Feel better.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, guys. See you.